At this very special time, the 4 days between Kippur and Sukkot, each one is Mechuvim Keneged the Shem Lavaya. So what's with all of the Averis that we did since Yom Kippur? So the Welt says of art, there's really no time to do any Averis because everyone's busy with the Resroigim and the Lovim. There's in the Sefer Aleinu L'Shabeach, very interesting Shiloh. Someone asked the Rav over there. He asked if he's allowed to go to his Daf Yomi Shir during Chalamoid Sukkos. He said, what's the Shiloh? Why should you not be able to go to a Daf Yomi Shir during Chalamoid Sukkos? So he said because he falls asleep usually during Shir. And there's a din, you're not supposed to sleep outside of the Sukkah. And that's true even for a Shina Sarai. That's true even for a temporary. It's true even for a temporary sleep. So he says, am I allowed to go to the shir knowing that I am going to doze off? So the Rav answered him that you're definitely allowed to go. And he based it says, Teishvu ke'en tadiru, that we live in the sukkah the way you live in your house. And being that all year you always leave your house to go sleep by the shir. So therefore, it's not a shayla. So therefore you could also, clearly, beyond any shadow of a doubt, you can leave your house to go sleep by the shir. Having said that, we say every morning by Birchas HaShachar, we say Amaver Sheina Me'enoi, Snuma Me'evape. We thank Hashem that He has removed sleep woke us up, and we follow that by saying, we beg of you Hashem, Shetagileinu B'Sarasecha. We should become accustomed to your Torah, V'Dabkeinu B'Mitzvasecha, attached to your mitzvahs, and so on. Rav Schwab, Zecher Tzadik Levracha, has a problem over here. First of all, he asks, why should Hamaver Sheina Me'enai be the last of the Birchas HaShachar? The Chayrit should be the first of the Birchas HaShachar. The first thing we should thank Hashem is that we wake up in the morning, right? That Hashem took sleep away from our eyes. So the order sounds a little bit strange. The order sounds a little bit funny. In other words, we're thanking Hashem that we have shoes before we're thanking Hashem for the fact that we're up. That He opened up our eyes and we're able to get up. How does that work? How could that work? And also, we say a machzor neshamas l'vgora mesim, right? We thank Hashem that you returned our neshama to, in effect, echad meishishim. Sleep is 1/60th of death. So why the hefsek? Then we go off to all sorts of different things, and we thank Hashem for all kinds of things like chickens crowing and sokev kefifim, mater asurim, and then we go back to this all the way at the end. We say thanks Hashem for waking us up. Right after a machzor neshamas l'vgora mesim, we should have gone right to that. The pasuk says by Adam Harishon, when Chava was created, Vayapal Elokim Tardema ala Adam, that Hashem put this major sleep on Adam Harishon and created Chava. Take note, says Rav Schwab, it never says in the pasuk that Adam Harishon woke up. It just as Hashem put him to sleep, it never says that he woke up. So Dr. Rav Schwab, he didn't. He never quite woke up. Relative to the level that he was beforehand, he never woke up. He never had that same level of behirus, that same level of arhagonus, that same level of amutna and perception of the Bari Olam as he did afterwards. So in a way, he fell into a sleep and he never quite woke up. B'shas Kabbalas HaTorah, Yidden got back a little bit of what Adam Harishon was, and again we slip back with the Chet HaEgel. So there's a certain mahalach. I always remember when I was a bacher of 14 years old, we were in camp and we were very busy at night. Didn't get to sleep till 4 o'clock in the morning because we were doing all sorts of mitzvahs, like helping the cook get rid of the leftovers and things like that. And I remember dozing off by shir and Maggid Shir, very chashuv Maggid Shir. And I still remember I was like sitting right over, he was facing me, and I may have even been snoring somewhat. And he said, Fischel! And I said, what do you want? And everyone burst into laughter. And I woke up and I realized who I just said it to. I was somewhat embarrassed, you can imagine.
Amen.
So I told the Rabbi, I apologized. I said, you realize that had I been up, I would have never said that. Right? So he said, that's the problem with this world. You know, a lot of people wouldn't say things if we were up. There was a certain level of sleep that Adam Harishon fell into when Chava was created, and he never quite got that back, except for by Kabbalas HaTorah. And what that means is we really forget what this world is all about. That somehow we live in this crazy illusion. We're going to be here forever. We don't think that we're going to die. We think, like the Chofetz Chaim used to say, people think there's a Chevra Starbers. There's a Chevra Shas, Chevra Mishnayos. So these group of people that die. I mean, none of us really look at this world as something being transient, as something temporary. So we all know the famous story that the Ramban had a Talmud who was ill, and the Ramban went to visit him. And he asked the Ramban, he said, Rabbi, can you please marry off my 9 daughters? Ramban said, sure, no problem. But I want you to do something for me. I live in very, very difficult times. We know we all live in difficult times. Ramban lived in, it was really rough for Klal Yisrael, for everyone. He himself had to run for his life many times and made it by the skin of his teeth. So he said, I'm makabel everything. When you go up to Shemayim, I just have a bunch of kashas. Like, why is Hashem doing this to us? So please go up to Shemayim, do me a favor, ask them, come back and give me an answer. Never came back. But of course the Ramban held his side of the bargain. He married off his 9 daughters. The end of his 9th daughter, not the end of his 9th daughter, the end of the marriage of his 9th daughter, the Ramban married her off, and he comes and says, Mazel Tov. He says, that's nice. Thanks for marrying off my 9 daughters. My pleasure. But by the way, you were supposed to come back and tell me, what's the answer to all the kashas, why Klal Yisrael is suffering the way they're suffering. So he said, what should I tell you? He said, when you asked me down here, it was a good kasha. When you come up there, you'll see that it's not a kasha. Like, that's the way it has to be. And I can't explain it to you. There's no answers down here, and up there, there's no question. There's a mashal in the Sefer Gesher HaChaim, where there are 2 twins that are growing up together, developing together in their mother. And they really, life is really great. You have a malach that teaches you kala terakula, a ner dolek al roishai, swimming from morning to the night. Really, food, you don't have to bother eating, the food goes right into your stomach. And they notice lately things are getting a little crowded, and one of them is pressured, and one of them is being pushed, and suddenly, all of a sudden, one day, the world is caving in on them. All the water is gone, and they're frightened, and everything seems to be collapsing upon them. And one of the 2 brothers starts yelling, help, help, I'm being pulled out, I'm being kidnapped, I'm being thrown out. And he's crying and screaming, and he disappears. And the brother that's inside yells, oh no, my brother died. When in reality, he was born. So he says, the Gesher HaChaim, that really our perception of life and death is the same way. That this world is very transient, this world is very temporary, and we really confuse life and death. It's 2 different things. This world is like a dream. And in a dream, sometimes we have loads of questions that we can't figure out why certain things are happening. Everyone has their shares of strange dreams. You want to know why I'm standing on Avenue J in my pajamas? Why? I keep getting dressed and I keep standing there in my pajamas. Why? In dreams don't make any sense. And dreams sometimes seem terribly frustrating. You put your car in reverse and it goes forward. You put your car forward, it goes in reverse, All these things happen to most people just in dreams. And then you wake up and you say it was just a dream. As I've often told you about the kid who came late. I said, Maishi, why are you coming in at 10 o'clock? And he said, Rabbi, I dreamt that the alarm clock rang, and I dreamt that I woke up, and I came to yeshiva, and I was here. So how did I know to wake up? It was my dream, and I was here. Right? Good time. All of a sudden, when you wake up, you say, it was all a dream. What happens after 120 years, in a flash, we say, so that's why I was down here in this world. It's not like it's going to require a long, drawn-out explanation. It's going to be like waking up from a dream. That was my mission? What was I so upset about? And then it's going to be very frustrating for us. We're going to say, how did I get so distracted? The Heilige Rishon once saw someone davening after the Zman, and he said to him, why are you davening after the Zman? So this chassid said, Rabbi, because you daven after the Zman. Nice chassid. So the Rabbi told him, I want to tell you a mashal. He said, once there was a husband came home, and he said to his wife, supper, tonight a special supper. And he's waiting and waiting and waiting, and the aroma, mamish, his mouth is watering. It's usually supper is at 7, it's 8, 9, 10. Finally she walks in, and she's holding this big tray, and she removes the cover, and she puts down this cottage cheese sandwich in front of him. So he's very angry. He says, for this I waited? For this I waited 2 hours? For this you made this whole thing? So the original kind of said, if you daven the way I daven, it's worth for Hashem to wait. But the way you're davening, why are you waiting? The husband's just going to get angry. So the chassid, not to be outdone, said to his Rebbe, that's only if there's no real love between the husband and wife. But if the husband and the wife really love each other, he'll take the kaddish sandwich 2 hours later. So the original later said that he thinks that the whole tafkid of this chassid being on this world was to make that comment. That somehow that comment, that's really what did it. Now, I want to explain something to you. When you say your whole tafkid on this world is, I once had a kid who said this. Rabbi, could it be my whole tafkid on this world is to learn? Yeah. Could it be my whole tafkid is to learn this block Gemara we're learning now? I said, it's possible. So he closes the Gemara. He says, no, if I do my tafkid, then I'm finished. He says, I'm scared. So I said, good point, but we have multiple tafkidim on this world. And usually one tafkid sets the stage for the next tafkid. And there's also the inyan of being mechanech others. So open your Gemara, please, I said. And don't worry about that. But I think that what the original really meant was a certain attitude. There's a certain attitude ben adam l'chaveira and a certain attitude ben adam l'makan. That if I waited 2 hours for a kaddish sandwich, and there's really love between husband and wife, or there's really love between a person and his bayri olam, then he understands that I have to have this kaddish sandwich 2 hours late. And that represents a kind of a higher calling. And we're going to be called to task on that. And in Shemayim, this is one of the things we're going to be judged on. How did you react when you got that kaddish sandwich 2 hours late? In Shemayim, it really won't make all that much of a difference, whether we got meatballs or kaddishes. It's going to make a difference how we reacted. And even if a person blows his tafkid on this world, even if a person had a certain mission and he didn't do it and he fell short, but if when things don't go his way, he closes his eyes and says, I love you anyway. This is the way it's going to be. Remember Rabbi Sherman read a letter here on Tisha B'Av about someone that was in the Spanish Inquisition that ran. 300,000 Jews left by the Spanish Inquisition. 3 million Jews stayed, 300,000 ran. And they were wandering from place to place. And he wrote a letter, and his letter writes like this. He was on some desert island, and he said, my wife died, my children died, I lost all my money. And if you think you're going to get me to be angry at you, it's not going to work. Right? This darga in our failure, this darga that we're happy with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and we say if there's true love between husband and wife, it doesn't make a difference. That works on both ends. It works in terms of how the Rabbi Shem relates to us. It also works that even if we blow what we have to do, this is a great tikkun and a kapara. So we're going to be embarrassed after 120 years over the things we got upset about. That's what you're angry about? That's what you got upset about? There's a sefer Olam Chesed Yibana. So he brings it from one of the Kadmoinim, that there was a guy in shul that was ranting and raving over an aliyah. Now, everyone has different types, but there have been stories in the past where people didn't get the right aliyah they wanted, and they stormed out of shul, and they shmatted themselves, and they joined the church and the crusades. There really have been, Rabbi Wein has such stories. I mean, today we're much more civilized. If a guy doesn't get the right aliyah, he just leaves and makes his own shul. But in those days, that's what they did. So in the Sefer Olam Chesed Yibana, he brings there like this. He says that this person was ranting and raving over an aliyah. I never really understood this. I was 13 years old, and I was the gabbai by default in a bungalow colony, Shabbos Minyan, like pre-summer. And I'm just calling everybody up, Kayin Levi, and I'm so proud to be the gabbai. And there's this yid there with a white beard, and I call him up for chamishi. And he gives me this real dirty look. And I can't figure out what I did wrong. And he finishes Shenas Alanu Taras Emes, and he looks at me and he goes, Baruch Hashem Avayrach. And he starts the next bracha. Because he was angry they didn't get shishi, so he took both for himself. It was a very eye-opening experience. So in the Sefer Olam Chesed Yibana, he brings over there, there was a Rav that once said, they asked him, do you want shlishi or shishi? He said, I don't want shlishi, I don't want shishi, I want to suffer, want to raise. There's a Yonis Neibishitz wrote that he came to a certain shul, and he saw a person standing in the corner of the shul, and the person was going, I'm a nothing, I'm dirt, I'm earth, I'm mamish, a piece of nothing, a human being is a nothing, I'm a worm, I'm not a person. He's going on. And also the Gabbai didn't give him shishi, and did he blow up at that Gabbai? He was screaming like a lunatic. So Rabbi Yonis Neibishitz says, I went over to the guy, I said to him, you're just saying for a couple of hours, I'm nothing, I'm a piece of earth. Why are you yelling at the Gabbai? He says, I was saying that to God. Klapai Hashem, I'm a piece of earth. Klapai this Gabbai? So this Sefer Olam Chesed Yibana brings that this person came up to Shemayim and they showed him, you were ranting and raving over an aliyah. You know what you had a tafkid in this world, you came down to do something. That's what you were upset about? So they told him his punishment was as follows. Either Gehenim, not going to get into the Gehenim, Reshus Chachma, look it up over there what it says what Gehenim is all like. Or we can replay the scene and you're going to be embarrassed in front of the Talmidei Chachamim that are in Olam Haba. When they see you getting angry, you're not going to have a priyuri, you're going to get angry and start screaming you didn't get shishi. And you're going to go through such busha. That'll be equivalent to the amount of time in Gehenna. So he writes there, they started replaying the scene, and he ran out and said, I'll take the Gehenna. That's how great the busha was, that this is what he was ranting and raving about, that this is what he was getting angry. So Rav Schwab teaches very beautifully. He says, he doesn't go on waking up. The physical waking up, that's Hamachs and Neshamas L'Gar Mesim. What we're saying to Hashem is, Adam Arisha fell into a tardema. Before Adam Arisha was asleep, he saw very clearly, there was the Araganis, he said, this is my tafkid on this world, and everything else was totally irrelevant. The Lekach Tay brings a beautiful vart. It says that Kadosh Baruch Hu split the top waters and the bottom waters. And the bottom waters was pretty upset that he was left behind. So the Rabbi Hashem appeased the waters that are at the bottom. How did Hashem appease the waters that are at the bottom? So it says two things. One is Al-Kol Karban Chatak of Melech, the salt water. And the other, how did Hashem appease the waters? That you have the Nisach Hanayim and Sukkot. So he makes the Rechesh, he says, how much water is there on the world that was left behind? If you take the sum total of cubic feet of water from the Atlantic, Pacific Oceans, all the rivers and lakes on this world, right? It's like a lot of water. And on top of that, you have, what did he get for it? That once a year they poured 3 lugin onto the Mizbeach. So for that it was worth it. That was an appeasement. So it shows us how all of this world is nothing compared to the one time you're doing what you have to do. That all of the Agmas Nefesh in this world, all of the Saras we go through, pales in comparison. If I told you that you had to get online to fill out some form for your taxes, and you stood there 6 hours, and some government attendant slammed the window in your face, and you, right? But if I told you you had to get online to cash in your $10 billion lottery ticket, you really wouldn't mind standing in line. You're not going to scream and complain. It's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it down here in this world. So what we're saying to Hashem is like this. I know we can't have the clarity the Adam Arishan had. Because if we had that, we wouldn't be worried about anything. Everything is just meaningless compared to what this world is all about. But I beg of you one thing. Take away a little bit of the sleep of our eyes, so that we shouldn't have such a hard time fighting off a Yetzirah. Take off the sleep a little bit from our eyes. Let's just realize, at least subconsciously, that this world is not where it is. Because at the point we say to the Rabbi Shalom, you know what? I don't care if my meal is late. And I don't care if it's a cottage cheese sandwich. All of that is meaningless. No one's going to know in 100 years from now what I ate. But my emotional reaction to the ups and downs of this world, that's going to last forever. And once a person puts that into motion, that's the ultimate ahava. That's the b'chol yom l'chein or l'chesed l'fenecha. So the Gra says an amazing thing. The Gra says that Pesach is the birth of Klal Yisrael, is the Leida. Achron shel Pesach is the bris. Shavuos is the bar mitzvah. What's Sukkot? Sukkot is the chuppah. You're in the sukkah, that's the chuppah, that's the canopy. Shmini Atzeres is the yichud room, and Simchas Torah is the dancing. I guess Isru Chag is when you get all the bills from the waiting. That's what it's Yom Tov. So I heard Rabbi Reisman says a story about a chassan that was like fuming under his chuppah because someone had misplaced his cufflinks. You take off the jewelry from the chassan kala, and someone had misplaced, and he was under the chuppah, and he was steaming. He was so angry. Can you imagine the disgrace? Can you imagine the affront this is to the kala? That he's angry over his cufflinks? That shouldn't become batul and mavutul kafir, the ara to the emotion of the moment that he's getting a new wife? Over the years there have been pretty embarrassing moments when people look through the chasana pictures. They say that story, there was somebody was going on a crusade about not having videos by chasanas. And he came to this wedding, and it was pretty, by the men's kabbalah's panim was pretty shvach and nice, a shtickle marble cake, dried out. So he walked into where the ladies were, you had the shmog over there. But it didn't really pass to take those little frankfurters with the dough around it, whatever they call it. So he took grapes, So he had a pretty good system. He had one plate underneath where he piled on these little frankfurters. Top of that, he put the grapes. And the guy calls him over and shows him in the video camera that he has it down pack exactly what he did. And he yells, how long I've been saying you should ask for videos by chasanas, do you see what's going on over here? Right? People have been pretty embarrassed sometimes. There was a true story once of someone one of the uncles who helped himself to a lot of cash out of someone's pocket during the dancing. And lo and behold, besides the heavenly camera that's always poised, everyone saw it. Big surprise, and the family got together to watch the wedding, and they noticed and take the cash out of someone else's pocket. But all of that will not be as embarrassing as the anger on this chassan about the cufflinks. That when all those neshamas and all those babas and zaydas came down to the chuppah, and all the future generations of neshamas came down to the chuppah, and they see this guy steaming that he's missing his cufflinks, the embarrassment of that is ein daima. And that's not just under the chuppah. It's true for every part of our lives. So Sukkot is a chuppah. And Sukkot is man simchaseinu. And why is it called man simchaseinu? Because it's mashpia simcha for the entire year. As much simcha as you can muster up on Sukkot, that's the handle of simcha that we have. We're in the gas station of simcha. And if you decide to get angry because you're missing your cufflinks, or for whatever other reason, it's terribly devastating. And it's going to be terrible. It's just a terrible price and terribly embarrassing. And the Rabbi Salanter once said, if you take away a paper boat from a kid, that's the same as taking away an ocean liner. Because for the kid, the paper boat and the ocean liner is the same thing. It's his toy. It's what he wants. So he once said that, but for a gadol, the avoid is that the ocean liner should be like a paper boat. That it doesn't really last. That's easier said than done. But to a certain degree, that's the inyan that we leave our home and we go into the sukkah. And that's why there is a halacha, and when it comes to sukkah, more so than anywhere else, of teishvuk and tediru. That if somebody is halchi drachim, he's pater min sukkah. Hey, I want to be in the sukkah. If someone technically is a meshamish to a chayla, he's pater min sukkah. Why? Because the inyan of sukkah is Hashem, wherever you put me, that's where I am. And if I can't be home for sukkahs, I have to be happy where I am. Because that's the whole inyan of sukkah, that I'm happy wherever I am. That's why I'm leaving my house. That's why you have this halacha by sukkah, more so than you have anywhere else. The Rachmas Rivka Rebbe, when he came to Eretz Yisrael, he took along 7 boards with him. It was very strange in Akko when he took those 7. The Arabs were laughing at him. He was 11 boards from Europe. But these 7 boards were made by his Zayda, and the Zayda was a very big Mekubal. And on each of the 7 boards, one was Mechuvim for Avram, the other for Yitzchak, the other for Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, Yosef, and David. And they made up his sukkah. And on each one, there was all sorts of Kabbalistic formulas and Shemais. And it was said that if you were in this sukkah, Misham Shayav and Ruach HaKodesh. And you can imagine what a hassle it was schlepping these 7 boards on the boat and then to Yerushalayim. And then when he set it up, people came from all over to see it. They said Shmuel Mesalant was already blind. He was 104 years old then, and he passed by and he says, I smell Ruach HaKodesh. And they brought him to the sukkah. The Rit Al-Ghazi came with his Talmidim, and he gave them shiurim on the various different shemas that were written on this, all sorts of stories about the Olam Haba and the Gan Eden and the light that beamed from the sukkah. 1 year the sukkah is gone. Gone. Regular sukkah, regular boards, your regular prefabricate, and whatever they had in those days in Yerushalayim. And everyone said, what happened to the sukkah? Not saying. They figured it was war years, maybe he was scared to display it in the open. They waited till the next year. Nope. And the next year they kept saying to the Rebbe, what happened to the sukkah? Wouldn't say. It was stolen. They couldn't believe how happy the Rebbe was. Even though the sukkah was stolen, he's still so happy on sukkahs. And no one knew really what happened to the sukkah until 13 years later. 13 years later, someone got up and he gave us and he gave a suda by his bar mitzvah of his son. And as we was a Taimani, and he really had no shaykhs with the Rebbe per se, but he walked into him one day in tears in his eyes. It was World War I, and the Turkish government confiscated basically all food. I mean, we don't realize what went on in World War I. 350,000 Jews were killed, just Jews. I mean, everybody, the damage, it's dwarfed by World War II. But in Yerushalayim, the sheer hunger, instead of half of the population or a third of the population of Yerushalayim was wiped out, the hunger and disease and so on. They went through unspeakable horrors. So he said the Turkish government had confiscated all water in the country. And he walked in and he said his kid had malaria, and the doctor said the only thing that could heal him, possibly heal him, was for him for 7 days consecutively to take warm baths. Now how exactly do you make warm baths? They did not have hot water pipes coming out of their showers in Yerushalayim. They didn't even have cold water pipes coming out of their showers in Yerushalayim. You had to scoop the water up from wells or cisterns. That's why it was all stagnant. I heard from Belsky's father that when he came to Radin the first time, so he said 2 things. I said, you saw the Chavetz Chaim? He says, yeah, you want to know the first time I saw the Chavetz Chaim? I was getting ready for this great story here. He says, the first I walked into shul, the Chavetz Chaim was standing on a chair, and he was leaning over a samovar, a urn, and he was scooping out lakshan spaghetti. And that was the first time he saw the Chavetz Chaim. Yeah, it seems that the guys were angry when they went to eat supper by the Balabatim in town. There was no dormitory. So they would serve them rice, and when the boys would leave, they would take out the chicken. So you always leave your watch or something, come knocking on the, excuse me, oh, sure, sit down, So finally they decided to protest. So they took all of the, being that one day everybody got spaghetti or something instead of the chicken, they took tubs of the spaghetti and they dumped it in the hot water thing. So when these guys come early in the morning and for hot water, spaghetti will come out. So the Chavetz Chaim heard about this in the middle of the night. He was standing and scooping out the spaghetti. That was the first time he saw the Chavetz Chaim. And he said he came to his dormitory room, his room in his shack. So they showed him some kind of prehistoric faucet. So he looked at it. So he said to them, "Is that cold water or hot water?" And they looked at him like he fell off the moon. They said, "Hot water? How does hot water come out of a faucet?" He said, "No, in America, hot water comes out of a faucet." And they started laughing at him. "You want us to think we're naive?" He said, "What else comes out of the faucet? Milk, juice, whatever. What else?" They didn't believe him. There was no hot water in Yerushalayim, and there was no wood. He said, "If my kid needs 7 days of hot baths to survive, what's going to be?" And the Rachman Shrifka Rebbe didn't think twice, and he walked down to the basement. He peeled off the shemos, and afterwards, like with a layer, and then he took the wood of the sukkah and he himself chopped it to little bits and heated up the baths for the kid for the next 7 days. And he warned him not to tell anyone the story until at least the kid is bar mitzvah, and he's long gone. Now, Pshari is what a Mesiras Nefesh to give up that sukkah. It's more than that. This was the tafkid of the sukkah. All of the greatness that this sukkah had paled in comparison to its ultimate greatness. And the same is true for all of us. All of the greatness that we have, or potential greatness, pales in comparison to the time in our life that we're willing to give ourselves up for someone else. And we're not willing to be discouraged, even if we lose it. Now, we all know the famous kasha that you've heard since first grade. If Sukkot is Zeicher Li'ananei HaKavod, so when should Sukkot be? Pesach time. That's when the Yidden had the clouds to protect them, right? We should have back-to-back Yom Tovim, Sukkot and Pesach. 2 Chalamoids. That would be very difficult setting up all the Chalamoid trips and so on. But look, you got to. Why is Sukkot now? So there's basically 3 tirutzim. There's one that the Torah says that if we would go out to Sukkot springtime, it would look like, look what the Jews are doing. Home Depot rolls out its lawn furniture, and the Jews, then they have a mitzvah also. So we do it now when they're taking in their lawn furniture. Number 2, why do we, in second teretz is why? Why do we have Sukkot time as opposed to Pesach? So the Pesikta says, in case it was Basheret Chas V'Shalom that a person on Yom Kippur was nigzer, he should have to be thrown out of his house. And there are many ways a person can be thrown out of his house. Besides for foreclosures, if he's in a hospital, that's also he's thrown out of his house. Rahman al-Islam. So he was Yotzed Gzeira by going into the Sukkah. But the Gross is a third teretz. He says the Anania covenant originally came on Pesach. That's true. But by the Chet Ego, it left them. When did it come back? When Hashem gave them back the Mishkan. So he makes a cheshbon. When did the Yidden get back the Anania covenant? Sukkot time. So the real test of marriage is when the marriage suffers its ups and downs, and we work it out, and we come back closer. The real Anania Kavod is not the first time the Yidden got it. The real Anania Kavod is after the Chet Ego, after the setbacks, and we came back. That's the real test of a chuppah. It says a very interesting thing. The Gra, as we know, tried to go to Eretz Yisrael. And he went as far as Amsterdam. And his son writes in the Akdama Torah Chaim, he told him that they told him in the Shemaim he can't go any further. That's basically what the Gra and the Baal Shem Tov had in common. They both tried to go to Eretz Yisrael, and they were told in Shemayim to come back. So there's a story that was given over to Reb Chaim Volozhiner that he wrote to others, that the Gra was overwhelmed by a terrible weakness, and he didn't know what to do. So they brought him to a Gevir in Amsterdam who had like a Achnas Archim house. And this Gevir had a huge big library, and the shul was in his house. And the Gra slept only 2 hours at night. Even when he was weak, he slept only 2 hours a night. And he ate only 2 kazeis in a day. That's it. So he knew he was a special person. He didn't know he was the Gra. And the Gra was there for a while until he got his strength back. And he was off. So he wanted to pay this person for being there. So the man said, no, chas v'shalom, I don't take money for my archim. Never, ever. I'm not going to take money from you. So he said to him, I want to do something for you. So he said to the Gra, give me musar. I should give you musar? Yeah, give me musar. All right? He says, I have no mussar to give you. I just noticed one thing, though. That every morning you run to your wife and you bring her negel wasser. You bring her breakfast in bed. You bring her lunch in bed if she's still there. You're like crazy. I know the Gemara says, Oye Fischel kegufa, and it's Hashras Hashchina, but what's the catch? Why do you do this? You seem to be doing more than the ordinary in terms of honoring your wife. You know, there was a woman who says, my son is so special. He's such a special husband, my son. He brings his wife breakfast in bed, and he makes lunch for her. It's amazing. Someone says, what about your daughter-in-law? My daughter-in-law is a lazy good-for-nothing. By breakfast, she still lays in bed, and someone has to bring it to her. All depends how you look at it, right? So the man says to the girl, what's the story? The girl says to the man, so why are you mechabed your wife so much? I'm not saying you're not doing right. Adarabah, just tell me there must be a story behind it. So the man tells the girl as follows. He says, I was a 10-year-old child protege. I was a genius. And my father-in-law, but I grew up in a poor house. I was dressed in rags. My father-in-law was a very rich person. And the Melamed said, grab this kid to be your son-in-law. He's going to be a Gadol B'Yisrael. So he took me, he dressed me in the finest clothes, and he hired the best Melamedim for me. And the deal was, when I turned 14, 15, I got married. And when I turned 14, 15, something happened. My father-in-law made some bad investments, and he lost every last cent that he had. He was reduced to being a pauper, and he had to fight his way to get out of debtor's jail. They had to collect money for him. He had to sell his house, everything. So before the wedding, my father, says this guy, right? He's only this 14-year-old kid, went to his mechutim to discuss the wedding, and he sees this old house. He sits down on a log. Everyone's dressed in rags. So he says to him, doesn't look like you're going to be able to meet all your commitments and support my son. So the guy says, what should I tell you? I don't have anything. He says, I can't help you. That's just the case. That's just the story. So he says to him, do me a favor, okay? He says, if you feel that your son is not going to be happy with my daughter now, so let's break the marriage. It wasn't a marriage, let's break the engagement. So the father, acting on behalf of his son, said, yeah, I want to break it. But I'm very scared. You hear all these stories. If you break an engagement, she's not going to be meichel. There could be terrible things. So they called in the daughter, and they said to her, are you meichel him if he breaks the engagement? He's not going to be happy without the money. And she started to cry, and she said, I'm meichel him. Listen, if he feels that way, I don't want to force him to marry me. It's the last thing I want to do. Meanwhile, he says, I didn't know anything about this. My father acted on my behalf. My father comes home. I see something's wrong. He tells me, listen, I got to tell you something. The marriage is off. So why? He shows me the time it was ripped up, and he says, listen. So I said, I want to marry her anyway. He said,